makes sense to be tested with consumers. Okay, next. Do you use an organizing brand idea and everything aligned that inspire everyone who works on the team? It's not just for advertising, but it could be product development, it could be my salespeople, it could be our, if it's a service business, your people, frontline people. Okay, next slide. In general, it was nice back in in my era, in the 1970s, when you saw stuff on TV, limited number of stations. You then went to the store, bought it, tried it, loved it, great. Now the thing's a mess. Right? We've got the consumer here, we've got all this stuff. That's why I want to organize it, because it's a mess. And organizing it doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. Next slide. What I start to do is I take my brand idea here, and I start to drive these 5 different areas. What's my promise, my story, my innovation, my purchase moment, and my experiences. What you'll see down here at the real bottom are the people in the company that I can influence, or outside the company, right? Packaging, logo, slogan, advertisement, media here, product development, sales and retail, and for the experiences, the happy people. That's the culture and operations. Next slide. And here's the example for Gray's cookies. The brand idea is guilt-free snacking. These should not be perfect iterations of that, but they should be specific to what we're going to do. It should all add up to the guilt-free snacking. But here I'm going to take back control. That's my promise. Here I'm going to use real-world stories. Here I believe I'm going to tell my product people we should never sacrifice on taste. Even though we kind of got to go for this low-fat, low-carb cookie, we still got to taste great. Okay? And so we see different elements across that. And they all add up, but not specifically perfect. Next. And here's where we start to think about beyond the marketing department. Everybody should be contributing to the brand. The brand idea, naturally, this is how we think too much of, that it's an external thing. So we got the logo, sales material, and communications, or advertising. That's normal. What brands are missing is the internal stuff. The innovation, the service, the culture that we create. And these should add up because we got to connect to the consumer, connect to the employees, and connect to the leaders, got to deliver it. So that guilt-free snacking, the CEO should be talking to IT. How are you going to deliver guilt-free snacking? How are we going to hire people? HR. Okay? Innovation people. How are you going to deliver guilt-free? And so even marketers, this is a great way for marketers, even if you're not in the room, people should be following the idea that you've worked hard to create shift meeting where they gather the team so if it's 6 in the morning, the 7 people that are working at Starbucks, the manager's going to talk about things. It's going to talk about one behavior per meeting, not 2, just 1. So they would say, okay, so it's Tuesday, I'm going to talk about this. And globally, Ritz-Carlton, who does it the best, sends stories around the world from different hotels that the boss can talk about how to bring that behavior to life. Next slide. You invest in your brand and link every investment to your P&L, profit and loss. So this is where we talk about investment. Next. So I like to write strategy statements in a unique way. It's developing this more and more, but it's the PAR. What is the program we're investing in? I've kind of got those 5 choices I showed you earlier, right? For the brand idea. Promise, story, innovation, purchase moment, or experience. I'm going to invest in one of those to tell my story. My focused accelerator, which is if I invest in it, there's some proof here that it's going to make it work faster. Okay? Any vegans or vegetarians in the room? One. My daughter's a vegan. She wears vegan boots. Do you think vegan boots are cheap or expensive? Expensive. When I grew up, that vegan boot that she's buying was a piece of crap cheap boot. It wasn't leather. It was sold in the cheap section. So part of it is that you didn't have that consumer need there. So the vegan boots are now more expensive than leather boots, whereas they were probably 20% of the cost of the leather boot when I grew up, because there was no vegan. They were just cheap, crappy boots. Now they're called vegan. Crappy boots are vegan. So you're kind of looking for some kind of thing that's already happening in the marketplace that is going to make your investment work harder. And then we're going to look for a result, either moving the consumer along their journey, tightening the bond with them, or some kind of penetration, frequency, profit. So these are some of your choices. So I've got another cheat sheet for you happening. Next. So what I've taken is I've taken this cheat sheet. I've got the 5 different investment spaces. I've got the 3 types of consumers. I've got the opportunity that I see. What we do, what they do, which is our consumer, and what we get from what they do. So if we look at it, I'm going to raise guilt-free cooking or positioning. That's what I'm going to communicate. What I want to focus on is new consumers who have, it's kind of like the vegan. I'm going to target those who are already living a low-carb life. I'm not going to get the average person, I'm going to get a low-carb person. Kind of like that vegan boot. It's already there. So that'll make it work harder. I'm going to attract them, so we try it. And as a result, I'm going to get penetration of that. And at that bottom, I could say to attract and tempt them to try Grace. And try higher share. So if I write my statements this way, I kind of connect what we're investing in into what we're getting. So if you give me $5 million, I'll give you growth. It probably will end up being $7 million back. Okay? So I'm connecting. As an investment, I'm going to be able to communicate to that CFO. Because it lays out clearly. What we don't want to do, what we tend to do too much is this. Boom, boom. We forget the rest of the stuff. I'm going to target new people with my message. It's going to be beautiful. want to tell them. So that's what we get to the result. Next slide. So by having this slot, by using written statements like this, I can run my business. With this, I can set my budget. I can structure my own team, and I can select the right partners. So here it's advertising. Going to the two advertising guys right in the room. I need to move consumers. Here I define the target. I get insights, and I take advantage of trends. And then at the bottom, right away, I actually have the desired response I'm going to put into my creative brief. I'm going to align with my partners. It could be sales or agency. And when my advertising agency brings me back an ad, the blue is what I'm going to use to judge it. Is the ad attracting intent and then the try race? That's what I want to use for the response of the advertising. And then my business results, I can connect this to the forecast, margin, and goals. I'll have that in the statement. So when I'm rating the goal of the year, when I'm tracking it, right there in the statement. So I take this kind of methodology, next slide, and I now have a plan. I got a vision, I got my key issue questions, and I got 3 PAR statements. One's going to be for my communication, one's going to be for my sales and retail, one's going to be for my innovation. My plan is relatively done if I get to that point. I can fill in other stuff, make it a pretty PowerPoint, but that is the guts of my plan. I'm now running my business and running my brand at the same time. Okay, next slide. So I talked a lot about Apple. What Apple, I want to tie this into the business. Look at the sales growth Apple's had from 2004. Look at the profit growth they've had. This. Next slide. Here's some beloved brands accounting rules. This might be what we have to convince others of. Long-term investment wins. The more you invest in building the brand, the more efficient that P&L will eventually get to be. If Apple didn't take a long-term vision, the beautiful P&L I just showed you with the sales and profit wouldn't look like that. The flip side, you can't outgrow short-term thinking. So with everybody fixated on the quarters, and I got to get my sales now, if you use a price cut today to save yourself, you will need a price cut 12 months from now to save yourself again. It's not a good recipe for growth. It's a recipe to make the number, but you never outgrow it. Because you're not investing in that brand. For our agency people in the room, great creative wins. This bad creative costs the same amount as good creative. So creative advertising, really good stuff, is probably one of the most efficient marketing spend we have. And so if we, we got 2 ad agency people, there are only 2. My daughter's an ad agency person. Who's the most important person in the ad creative? Copywriter? The marketer. You know why the marketer is the most important person in the room? Because we can wreck his advertising. We don't have the power to make it great. He does. But we have the power to wreck it. And we have to stop that. Because if he gives us great advertising, that's a great investment. If I wreck it, Russell will make it. It'll do lousy. And I'll blame them, but I wrecked it. And that makes it inefficient. So we should stop wrecking stuff. In terms of products, we should make products that people want, because it's also expensive to make people want what we make. So if we what the consumer wants and go make it, it's a relatively easy job. If we blindly make stuff, now we're in a two-step. So the make what they want. You want low fat, I got low fat. It's an easy advertisement, very efficient. So I make something you don't even want. I gotta explain what it is. That's half the ad. And then I gotta make you want it. That's half the ad. That ad's gonna fail. Right? There's a famous quote, one of those DTV guys, advertising can't save a bad product. It can only make it more aware that it's really bad. If we can tap into our people, so marketing can actually be the inspiration, the spark for every company to deliver their best work, our ad agency people. I had a weird thing, so I was in marketing. We had K.M.TV as the ad agency who then now killed. My daughter's a WPP person. WPP killed K.M.TV. Hurts my heart. I figured out, as I was probably mid-career, if I was my creative people's favorite client, I would get their best work. And that was the turning point to me going from okay advertising to great advertising. But I figured out that if I could be their best client, now, for you running the agency, it's tough to run creative people, to manage creative people. They're very emotional. And so, if I flip side, if I pissed them off, they would shut down, and he would have to convince them to keep going. The passion in everybody who works for you, that will be what translates into power and profit the most. So we got a bunch of service people in the room. Datamine, same thing, right? You got to ignite the talent that you've got, and you will be bigger and better. Next slide. And my whole core belief is summed up in this very simple equation. The more loved your brand is by consumers, the more powerful and profitable your brand will be. And so all that stuff that I hope we put into it makes it more loved. Even being my creative people's favorite client, I get better stuff. Making products that people want easier to sell. Knowing the consumer as an insight makes it easier to connect with. Right? Okay, so that's our morning slide. Show me a beloved brand, I'll show you a beautiful P&L. There's not too many beautiful beloved brands that are going bankrupt or poor. Like, you know, if there is, there might be some mismanagement here and there. But show me a beloved brand, they'll have a beautiful P&L. High margins, high profit, high growth. And that's why you want to make a beloved brand. That's what you should tell everybody. Why being emotionally connected matters. We make more money. We get bigger lives. More people want to work with us. Okay? That's it.
Round of applause.
Maybe we'll fix the question.
We have questions at this point. We have pressure for the P&L. If you make the P&L make sense, like the brand.
your biggest struggle in your job?
I'll go for a six. We only two there. So I think the biggest struggle, I think you touched on a lot of some of this, definition. Our biggest struggle as an agency is an advertising agency serving these amazing clients. It's just a resistance that we get from the clients. I think from the onset, the dynamics around just the relationship is skewed, and a lot of the clients view us as service providers rather than partners. So even from the time the brief comes in, it's us versus them. Is I have put in the brief, you will do your thing. It's not a collaborative sort of effort. And then by the time we're coming back to them, it's almost like someone is marking an exam. They have this sort of answers to this and checking them. And you said something here where so they kill the idea. Because they have these preconceived positions, they already have a perspective that they were expecting us to come with. Because they didn't give us that information, so we went ahead and dreamt and had these amazing sort of visions and dreams of how we would sell the product or run. By the time we're coming back to them, it's just, kill this. This won't go on. And that's the biggest struggle. So we find our boardroom conversations are never happy conversations.
So I have a grid in my book. I didn't put it in this chart. So if we put a grid that's a 2x2, so 4 boxes. Along one side is smart advertising. Along the other grid is different. So what we want to get to as marketers is smart and different. Where we end up is smart and the same. We get scared by different. So the clutter. So they estimate that we see 5,000 brands a day. When you're on your phone, you're getting inundated. We see signs. I see Pepsi over here logo. See them on my different places. How many of those brands is the consumer going to connect with per day? 5,000 of them. I can put 10. 5 of them are going to be Nike. Out of the 5, Nike, Apple, Adidas, maybe some music or something cool. Coke. You're done. You only got 5 slots left. So to break through, you have to be oddly enough more creative than Coke, Apple, and Nike. And so where we get scared is we get smart and the same. And it's a smart strategy. I'll show you this afternoon, but I had one of my identity guys years ago, it was probably early to mid stage of my career. He asked me, so what do you see the ad looking like? I thought about it for half an hour. And I said, I have no clue. And I'm happy with that. Because I want you to surprise me. And I'll talk a little later about how creative should be the perfect gift you never thought to get yourself. We should brief them on what we want. What would be the perfect gift? Give them some hints again, like your spouse. I'll tell you what, I've been married 33 years last week. Almost never drink. Okay, the best gift my wife ever got me was Italian hamburger buns. We used to live on the other side of town. And I probably spent 10, I love bread and cheese. Those are probably apparently the other gift for you. I've never met a bread or a cheese that I don't like yet. I wish they would make them healthy. So I probably spent 10 to 20 years bringing them, oh my it's like a 45-minute drive. It's not worth going on this side of the city to get bread for $4. It's good. We go stale in 2 days, right? Italian, French. Anyway, my wife got me buns for my birthday. Best gift ever. But I probably hinted. I traded the brief in a sense by saying I can't get those buns. It's impossible to buy for a spouse these days because my birthday's in June. Well, in May, if I want something, I got new headphones. Get new headphones. The next day, you've got new headphones. So it's tough to get gifts for your spouse. So hamburger buns were the best gift because I briefed her, and she surprised me. Got me the gift I would never imagine a person getting. $4 hamburger buns. Okay, so that was knowing the consumer, listening to what their feedback was, and delivering the surprise. That's how I look at it. It's a gift that surprises me. And we get scared. I do training on advertising, not how to make it, but how to appreciate it. By showing that Nike ad the other night. So it's the Nike where the iguana is dead. I think it won a Canada Award about 3 years ago. The guy is ugly. And if the guy wasn't ugly, it wouldn't have attracted your attention. But I could see us going, that guy doesn't look like the apple. A 35-year-old banker looking like the average person. He did not look at that, but he attracted your attention. The music attracted. Required a huge fight internally. I had to fight with my boss almost to the point of quitting or getting fired sometimes close. Like that intense a fight. And that work was my best work. And when I looked at all the crap I made, because we all make crap. So I did a display that was crap because we had limited time. I always found that crap got approved so easily. And I could only notice that after. And that's because we did that last year. So that'll work. But that worked because we did it last year. And all of a sudden it's not different. We did the same thing last year. And it got boring. Or our competitor did. And so, we did the exact same thing as our competitor did. They mistook it for our competitor. But it got approved because people were seeing success in the market with the other guy. And so we have to get more comfortable with the creative side of different. What was the worst stage of my brand love curve? Indifference. That means we don't feel anything about it. So if you can't get comfortable with different, you're going to end up in the indifference stage. What's the next hardest part of your job?
Thanks, Grandma. I think for me, it's dinosaur transitioning to the new age. So when we still maintain what our core brand proposition is, we find a lot of resistance, especially in family-owned businesses, or transitioning and moving along that brand to be more relevant into today's world. So how do you manage that?
So I've worked with a lot of CPG companies, the FMCG type brands, and those are the ones that face it the most. So if the brand launched in 1920, Coke, Listerine, whatever, Ariel, what you got comfortable with until about 2010 was you did a TV ad and you sold it in the grocery store. Those two things have changed. And so we start to see that you're hanging on to the 45 to 60-year-old who still shops that way. And it's hard to do both at the same time. So I never want to give a general answer. But your younger consumers are shopping online and using some of the more modern techniques of advertising. You may have to do both at the same time, or you might have to coach with your older consumer for a little bit. So I've had a few clients the last few years. I had Mondelez, their whole portfolio, which you guys probably have Mondelez here, Kraft. Their whole portfolio is that 50-year-old peanut butter and cheese and pasta and coffee. Maxwell's, I think, is theirs. It's all not so comfortable. The 50-year-old was 25 years ago, so we just wrote it out with that. And we kind of missed out on what some of the more modern brands are eating the last 5 to 10% of the market share in the business. And that's what's happening. And so look at how the 25-year-olds shop. And so I read a study, a 25-year-old, when they go shopping, they go around the outside of the grocery store and leave. They get fresh bread, fresh vegetables, fresh meat, and leave. All the CPG stuff is in the middle aisles, and they're missing out on that. Young people, I don't know about here, but young people are drinking less alcohol. It's down significantly. Which is bizarre. So how do you and this is where you've got to have probably two situations. You've got to ride out with that customer that's 50. You got to still feed that beast because that's your biggest sales. But you got to figure out a new way to get the 25-year-old. I don't know if the answer, but let's use Maxwell, Mondelez brand. I went to the grocery store the other day. It's a dying brand because it's to the 50-year-old person. And it should just die slowly with that customer and come up with something new for the 25-year-old rather than how do we shift Maxwell's to the 25-year-old? And there's so many things that are wrong with that proposition that it's just going to make it so messy. So coffee globally, if you're over 40, probably over 45 now. If you're over 45, most of your coffee is drank in the home. This is globally. So 90% of your coffee is made at home. If you're under 40, 90% of your coffee is drank on the go. So right away, we have almost two worlds operating. So I can't take Maxwell's and get a 25-year-old to drink it. I should reinvent something for that 25-year-old. And that's what I see as the challenge with FMCG, because we made our living and we wrote it. We wrote it out, that 50-year-old person now. And now we can't figure out the 25-year-old.
Hi, Daniel. Just to sort of counter what you just said, and I don't have as much experience in FMCG, but I pay attention to some of these big, not historic, but brands that have been here for a while. And I'll give two examples. Harley Davidson, which I'm sure you and good friend here is very, very familiar with. And then there's a brand that decided to go deep. Not Jaguar, okay? So on the one end, you have Harley Davidson that has spoken to this guy from when he was 12 years old, possibly, to when he's 6 years old and is still, loyal to this brand. And they told their story so consistently that his son and daughter, in this case, will also pick up the Harley Davidson, and they will carry on. And it's not a story that they're willing to change. And they know that yes, we're speaking to should be an older person, 45, 50-year-old, but they're very consistent with that. Yeah. And then you have Jaguar that says maybe our consumer is changing, so we need to change with them. And then they take beloved brand, and in my opinion, personal opinion, decided to destroy it because they wanted to be woke, they wanted to appeal to a younger audience. And maybe it does appeal to a section of the audience. But effectively, you kill your current market because if I'm driving a Jaguar, I don't want to be associated with a brand that's, you come from a more open-minded society. In Uganda, there are certain cultures, certain things that will not be very comfortable with. So, to sort of counter what you're trying to say about brands and sort of what she was trying to allude to, which is you have these dinosaur brands that are now trying to appeal to a younger audience. And by changing your brand story completely just to fit that young audience, you're going to lose 8 while chasing 4.
Yeah. So the problem, so this is more prevalent in the CPG space. I include the alcohol in the CPG space. Because of the distribution was so prevalent of how it was, and the media choices were so prevalent of how it was. The brand like Harley is word of mouth. It's dealer network that's passed down funds. If we take a brand like Old Spice died so they could reinvent themselves. So her issue is that Guinness is still a really strong brand globally. That Guinness is dead.
It really is.
But anyway, so you've got a brand that is very comfortable to that older consumer. And that's where Maxwell House, it's tough to let it go because you almost got to ride it out until that 50-year-old lady instead of reinventing it. They've tried. They've come up with the pods, Maxwell House specifically, the turbo, but the consumer kind of rejects it because it's mom's Maxwell House. Tastes like crap. What I'm used to. So that's where the hard part is. It's hard to completely change a brand like Jaguar when 90% of your market is still pretty good, but it's dwindling. It'll be 85% 5 years from now, it'll be 75% 10 years. You just got to dwindle with it. Jaguar, I think, was dying 30 years ago. They haven't changed it at all. It was an old man car when I was young, and I think it is viewed as that. And until it completely dies, I don't think you can reinvent it. Because so Old Spice, do you have that here or not? A 25-year-old doesn't know that when I was that age, Old Spice died. It was the product that nobody used. It was my grandfather's product. And so with it, luckily it died. So much so that the 25-year-old thinks it's for them. They've never heard of anything else. That's why I think people my age thinks it's funny that Old Spice is so new. Like, I remember that thing. Yeah. My son doesn't even know that it ever existed until 2010 when he was 15. It's made for me. So there is an advantage to dying. Probably actually died almost in the 1970s, 1980s. Sort of recovered too. But they're doing quite well. Other questions?
Yes, thanks, Officer. Coming from an experiential marketing point of view, what do you think the future of brand experiences is?
Or people. So if you're creating an experience, it's going to be the people that are going to create that experience more so than other things. So what kind of business is it?
Experiential marketing.
Is it to the point of restaurants or is it the experiential marketing for brands?
Brand.
Okay. So I've always been a big believer in experiential marketing because you get out there in the community and you can interact with people. So sampling was always a big thing for me. Where is the future? I don't know where the future is. I haven't thought about that much. But I think, some people view, sampling and experiential as top of funnel. They'll use that phrase, awareness only. And I think it has a big advantage to be awareness and conversion within the moment of the experiential. That's probably what you've got to keep convincing your clients of, that we are awareness and trial right there. That's what I'm doing.
Thank you, Laura. So, marketing. Innovation, but also media. So how should it then strike a balance between one maintaining emotional connection with the consumers and also managing the spend and making sure that it's managed efficiently?
Yeah, I think the Harley's going to be a good example here because Harley keeps reinventing that emotional connection. Look at a few brands right now that are globally. Nike's kind of struggling right now. Disney's struggling a little bit. And I think these beloved brands, once you get to that stage, the worst thing you can be is complacent. Where you're like, I'm a beloved brand, I'm great, keep doing the same stuff. And in 5 years later, times change and you haven't changed. I think that's part of what Nike's going through. Nike, the last year of advertising is looking confused. It's almost getting as bad as the, 1 month they're doing really hard-hitting advertising about the aggression of an athlete, didn't work. Then they go back to this other stuff, more lighthearted, didn't work. And the consumer's confused, the brand's confused. Probably because they didn't keep reinventing themselves. Whereas I think Harley, if this is great that the 35-year-old drivers now going to pass that on to the 12-year-old son that we want to be part of that, that's a good thing. It's an interesting way to look at it. Every brand makes mistakes, by the way. The worst mistake Harley ever made, on their, I think it was their 75th or 100th birthday, they got a singer to be part of it. Who would you get to be on brand? Y'all have some bands that might be good. Harley Davidson. Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, whatever. They got a musician that did not fit the brand so badly that the Harley fans rioted, stormed the stage, and destroyed the stage. They got Elton John. What? Exactly. Oh, Elton John came out. And the Harley fans just said, that's it, we're gonna kill Elton John. That was a bad brand.
All right, thank you, Grandma. Sandra here, Vision Fund Uganda. So in contexts like financial inclusion institutions, where marketing is seen as a support rather than the strategy, like a strategy, what advice would you give to try and shift the mindset and culture of the people, especially regarding branding, to look at it as an that is going to help us, have a beautiful P&L for the long term.
So 3 businesses, and I'll generalize this, 3 businesses where marketing is stuffed in the corner a little bit. Financial institution, technology, and B2B. Because what they want to do, I had it on that slide. They make a product, they come up with something, a new visa, they never consult marketing. And they're like, here it is. You're like, the hell's that? And again, you've got to take the 2-step approach of making the consumer want that stuff and then selling it. Whereas if you just make stuff people want, it's an easier, like your brief, your agency, your guy over here, it'll be a mess. You gotta sell this widget that nobody wants, and it's faster. He's gonna go, I gotta make an ad for somebody that doesn't want something. So what, it's gonna be hard, but you gotta fight the fight of trying to convince people that we need to be, if you could get a financial institution to be more consumer-centric, you would have a huge win. I'll also put airlines in that, they just flew. Mention the Belgian airline. They may fly a lot. You get the stage 1, stage 2, zone 3, 4, whatever. Things a mess. Like, I wonder if some of these marketers aren't actually using their brands. And so maybe it'd be interesting to see if you took some of your bank executives and got them to actually interact with the brand as a consumer and see how confusing it gets. It has to be messy. It has to be ugly. Like, because I'm a marketer, I do some weird things just for fun, like sarcasm. But like my bank is a way of free, whatever, if I join. Well, I've been with my bank 30 years. So every once in a while, if I'm in a sarcastic mood, I'll ask the bank teller, so what's my prize if I've been with you for 30 years? And they go, nothing. That's exactly what I said. Say thank you to the customer that loves you. I've been with you 30 years, and somebody who's with you for 30 days gets a free toaster. That's not fair. That's not right. That's not good marketing. That's the kind of thing that happens. So I would say let's get more consumer-centric. Let's design our financial institution products that fit with consumer needs, and we will be so much farther ahead. We create an internal culture of being aware of what consumers want. Invite some of the non-marketers to your market research. But it's not easy. Those 3 types of brands, I hear the biggest complaint. The marketing is basically mark-on, and you're sort of told late in the process. I forget what one of my clients was, like in the appliances, so still kind of in that space. And they made a product, and they actually told me that the product was worse than last year's product, but they had to market it because it was the product was designed for this new year. So you're now doing a fridge that's worse than last year's fridge, and then you hand it to marketing and say, make me a great ad. Okay.
It even creates a service business.
Yeah. surprising how bad some of the tech marketing, tech businesses and their view of marketing. One of the things I write about too once in a while is everybody thinks they can do marketing because they've seen an ad on TV or a billboard on the street. So then they tell marketing what to do. And we have to say thank you to the dumbest ideas we ever heard. They come by your office and say, we should be on Instagram. We should be on TikTok. And you're like, we market our heart medication. Oh, TikTok. Thanks. You know, my worst situation ever was I was like brutal 3-hour meeting with the CFO where he pretty much destroyed my whole budget for the year. And I was just trying to hang on to every penny possible. And then after the meeting, I go back to my desk, I'm like miserable, I'm worried about how I'm gonna tell my team that we just lost 20% of our spend. And the CFO comes by with an idea. And I'm like, I think I ended up throwing him out of the office. And says, you just took all my money, we'll come with cute ideas. You want cute now? Give me more money. That's what I want.
Thank you, Graham. From your experience, how have you helped brands like ours whose fellow consumer do not actually make the buying decision that doctors? How do you make such a brand become beloved? It's a very unique situation for us. That our final consumers do not actually get to decide on what they consume. That decision is meant for them.
So are you selling to doctors mainly?
Yeah, doctors and pharmacists, pharmaceutical dispensers mostly.
Yeah, the hard part is you have, the challenge there is you have to think like you're, as much as we think like our consumer on a, Coke, we have to think like our doctor, but our doctor has to then be our media because they're delivering the brand message to our consumer. So heart medication, they're going to tell the consumer what heart medication. So you've got to get it in that doctor's brain. Do not go away though from the stuff we show here today with benefits of functional and emotional. Because if you can get your doctor to convey that something is easier on the stomach, that's a benefit. That take it longer or feel more comfortable at home. Some medications are easier than help that. Kind of like the tech space, I see the pharma space trying to be the biggest rocket. We go faster, we go longer lasting, we go better. And they kind of miss it on the emotional side. And I think in my case, I can't speak to Uganda, but when I see around the world, a lot of marketing, a lot of medical people are actually pretty emotional people. And so if you can tap into their emotions and use insights, we have some tools that reflect that on our pharma side point of view, because as much as we build a consumer profile, we equally build a medical one, and they should mirror each other. So maybe I'll put some of those, I'll send some of that to the Datamine team, they can share it with them. Yeah. Oh, sorry, come back to it.
Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. Two questions. One, just wanted to find out from you, if you're creating, say, like a dashboard of what the performance indicators, say, for a marketing department, what would be your top 3 KPIs that you'd be looking at monitoring, say, on a monthly basis? And then the other, from your perspective, would you say brand love is the same as brand equity, and if they're different, how would that be, and how do you measure what those
For mobile phones, maybe not penetration and frequency, but if you could move the funnel is probably a good way compared to you to the other mobility companies. And about a funnel, I would also equally look at the leaks of that funnel. Why do we lose customers at each stage? What's happening? And if we can close those leaks, that's equally powerful to create more top line, top of the funnel. Closing leaks is a good thing. I think I'm gonna guess. I haven't lived in Uganda, but I can guess that mobility is a frustrating category for consumers. There's probably some leaks you can close, and I would look at a case study is T-Mobile in the U.S. T-Mobile is probably, I did the work with the mobility company in Maldives. And I did a presentation for the executive team of the Maldives communication company that looked at T-Mobile as a case study. I've got one on my blog. If you go on beloved-brands.com, go to the search button and look up T-Mobile. You might see some stuff there. They did some great stuff with closing the leaks. It changed their whole customer service model. Any other questions? Oh, brand equity is actually a term that came from the 1980s. And we kind of got to make sure we use the terms the right way. Brand equity is actually a financial term. And what we end up doing is we misuse the term brand equity and then it causes confusion. It's the same thing right now. I don't like this brand ad. I don't know what a brand ad is. Isn't it every ad a brand ad? Yeah, that's what frustrates me. So brand equity is the measure the finance. So this tie is worth $100 million and the product is worth 50. Although the equity, the guy who explained the term brand equity, he couldn't explain why he was overpaid for the purchase of the Visco brand back in the 1980s. And he said he's paid for brand equity, which is the undefined part that you would pay for. You may be close to brand love. Don't know. I'm not a big fan of the term brand equity.
Couple of questions. The follow-up question that my colleague asked for the prescription medicines.
Yeah.
Very specific about this particular segment. First thing is about keeping the message intact, because in prescription medicine you are not using any other media beyond the sales force that you are deploying in the market.
Yeah.
So your doctor is getting every day the message through only the human media that you are using there. So the message quality keeps changing between circumstances, the kind of day they have. So the message is not consistent. That is one thing I have observed over whatever time I was spending in the prescription business. So that is one question from my end. How do you keep the messaging intact, the brand messaging intact, when you have a great reputation of the media that you are using to talk to your customers?
Yeah, so it's got to be tighter and simpler than it currently is. So this guy's selling through a TV or a phone online or whatever. He needs it simple. But then you need your people are the TV.
Exactly.
And they need to capture the attention of that doctor who may or may not give them time. So you have to have a headline that brings them in. And so arguably, I was working with a dental tool company, different in a sense. But the dental tool company shifted their whole positioning from the tool works better, so the tool helps your tired hands. And that was such a difference in that brand because the tired hands was the professional. So if I'll use my other example. Tonight I'll show an example with quit smoking. The quit smoking, the insight in the quit smoking is I get scared when I try to quit smoking without any help because I turn into a monster. That's the consumer insight. The doctor insight in that space, are you tired of nagging your patients? Wouldn't it be nice if there was an easier way for them to quit smoking? And so you're connecting with still an insight, but it is an insight about the doctor. Are you tired of nagging your patients? Like, yeah, I am. There's an easier solution. Here it is. That's where you could probably go a little more. So think of your doctor as your consumer, and just all the work we did with emotional and functional benefits, you need to talk about the emotional benefits of that doctor. Doctors, from my experience, are strange enough. I would say I've done a lot of work with doctors. I've got a guest that's pretty global. Doctors are very emotional people, and they're actually socialists. It's kind of a weird thing. They make a lot of money, but they believe. So the socialism makes them. So most people get cholesterol over 50. Most people over 50 are already taking medication. So they won on that. And so best, one of the things maybe I'll phrase it this way. When a CEO tries to be too many things, I always ask them the same question. I'll give you 4 choices. You can be better, different, cheaper, or not around for very long. As a brand, those are really your 4 choices. Everybody wants to immediately choose the better. Samsung phone is better. Apple is different. Different is winning in that case. It's not as good a phone. It's slower. The camera's not as good. And what else do you want this thing for? Speed and camera. So Samsung beats it on both. frustrated. Go back to that 2006 advertising with I'm a Mac, I'm a PC. They made 66 ads in that campaign that were all talking about the frustration of Microsoft. The same thing as the frustration with the other technology. The same thing with pharma. There's a lot in common there. We get so fixated on explaining why it's so great, we miss out on why the consumer should use it. And inevitably, we get why the doctors, patients should use it. Pharma people get scared when I say consumer or patient because they go, I can't advertise. Still, think about them. Because the doctor is your media. So you got to think through the doctor to that end patient. I have a lot of passion for healthcare.
Thank you, Daniel. Mine is not a question, it's an observation. Over the years, I've been in marketing and tutoring, teaching marketing. It comes as a result of Vision Fund's question. I think it was indicating that there is little appreciation for the efforts of the marketer. I have heard this over and over, but what I realize is that probably the marketers are not convincing the CFOs and CEOs. The CEOs are more interested in revenue. That's the language they understand. So the marketers in here should be able to specifically show how the revenue, that's where you talk of the P&L. These terminologies are very known as marketers, creating awareness. We know obviously, without awareness of our products and services, there will be no sale. But probably we stop at informing the CEOs or the budget man, the finance man, that we need a budget to create awareness of our products and services. He hardly makes sense of that. He looks at that as a cost. But if we have metrics to show specifically where we were, probably before the creation of awareness, and where we are in terms of money, then they will be easily convinced to offer the budget. These terminologies of penetration takes long to understand. You are looking for market penetration. You are looking for frequency or a share of voice. They hardly understand this. They only understand one level. They are from an accounting orientation. Money. So if you have the metrics to show how your efforts are contributing to the here and there, they will buy the ideas. Attraction, the sales fund, for example. If you can show how much money is being lost by losing customers along the sales funnel journey, they will listen to you. There should be evidence to show that. But if you move in, their officers talking about we need to increase awareness, attraction, love for our brand. They struggle to read our ideas. So, but when an idea comes in from, say, procurement or logistics or a capital investment, they are fast to give them money other than marketing investment. Thank you.
Well, I find within marketing itself, well, let me actually explain this in a little different ways. Marketers have to have their foot in two different spaces. With these guys, where they're creative people, I should never mention numbers. With my finance person, I should never mention art. And so I gotta learn to talk in two different ways about the same stuff. And that is what we do. I have a phrase, advertising people see art, finance people see numbers, marketers have to see art and numbers at the same time. We have to be able to explain the art and numbers to the finance person. They try to get people to get rid of their stupid graphs, charts, with creative people. It's a shock about marketers. First of all, anybody that's 10-point PowerPoint presentation that's free from their agency that frustrates me. If anybody has charts, how do you convince these people not to put charts in your brief? Because I like charts. I guess who doesn't? Creative people. So that's where we have to find that, put it in both ways. We have to, that's what I was trying to say at the end there. We have to learn to talk like the CFO, that we are an investment. And here's what your investment's getting back for you. I worked on Listerine, which I didn't see on the shelf, so I don't know if it's here in the country, but it's a mouthwash. So Listerine, I was going through some frustrations on Listerine, and it was tough to get penetration because it's such a vicious taste. And so I came up with this strategy that changed the whole model, which was to go, we're not going to get any more consumers. We're just going to get our current consumers to use it more differently. People were using Listerine 35 times a year, and I needed people to use it 200 times a year, every day-ish. So I showed the model that showed how 1% of our current users, we would tell them to use it twice a day, but if they really just used it once a day, we only needed 1% of our current users, and we would grow 10% in sales without added spend. And for 10 straight years, we grew over 10%. Just by going frequency. But we laid out the model of how that worked and convinced management, CFO, CEO, that frequency was the way to go. So we said, whenever you browse, use Listerine. Whenever you browse, use Listerine. And that was our big win, but it was explained with math. Not great people. It was explained internally with math. And we have to be able to do that. And so marketers, if you can't do finance, you will eventually get stuck in your career. You've got to be able to live in both worlds, in the art world and the numbers world. And that's a hard thing. We had 3 people at dinner the other night who confessed that their moms, like my mom, wanted me to be an accountant. And I had to convince my mom that I hated it. But very much better. But then all I figured out, I was telling people to different people, that all I figured out was that my mom just wants something for taxes. So, but anyway, we have to be good in both worlds to sell it.
Just want to share what with the marketers in here. I've been teaching a paper called Managing Corporate Reputation, and which is now digital marketing communications. You bear witness of me. There's a point where you have to explain why the model. What are the benefits that organizations get if they build a strong reputation with multiple stakeholders, not only the consumers? And the one author, Oprah, says because it works as marketing. Simply work on your reputation. You attract customers, you attract top employees, you attract the media, you attract the investors, you attract the regulatory bodies, all will be by your side. But this is not easy. explain to the CFOs and the CEOs. But it is, to us, it looks obvious. And I use the examples to say, who would not benefit from having a good reputation? I even use a simple example. If I have a good reputation of paying on time, I walk into a bank, I will be given a loan. Or I walk to a colleague, he'll give me the money because I'm reputed. Reputed means I'm grateful, I'm trustworthy, I'm responsible. But it becomes hard. So let's have the numbers. For example, reputation costs a drop of the money. My colleagues there would say, "Yo, now we are preaching, no money will come to our houses." But I work on my reputation, save millions of shillings that I would take to my friend there. And then I show the CFO how much I have saved by simply building a strong reputation, strong relationship with the multiple stakeholders.
But you'll see on that Brad love curve that what comes before love is trust. I don't think we can love a human that we can't trust. I don't think we can love a brand that we can't trust. And I would say that's where the reputation comes into play. We almost need 10 uses of a given brand. We kind of, as consumers, as humans, we're constantly doubters. So we think everybody, we're going to get screwed by this deal. We're buying this, we're going to get screwed. I'll try it once. That's pretty good. But maybe it's not going to work a second time. And they need to go through it 5 to 10 to gain trust with it. Now the flip side of that is, on a global scale, we're seeing right now that Elon Musk has pretty well destroyed the Tesla brand with lack of trust in the last 18 months. He has gone politically after the people who want an electric car. So there's nothing wrong with having political views, but make sure your political views line up with your customer base, or it could be damaged problems. The Tesla brand sales, I think European Tesla sales were like down 40%. So it's a real big situation where reputation can, you need to be very careful with the trust you earn, but it can quickly be destroyed as well.
Yep. We need to wrap up the session. There's two last ones and then we wrap up. Yeah. That's okay?
Thank you. Once again, my name is Sada Kassim. I just want to make a few things for the future. That is by experience. This has been a CFO for some number of years, and the need agrees with me about the issue of the budgeting. How they are supposed to incorporate the marketing expenses. It is a bit very hard. But in my view, I think we need to move towards a direction where we ensure that where there is growth in an organization, it must be that we must look at it from a strategic plan or direction. What contributes to that growth? So it is at this moment that the marketeers must show a case why the expenses related to marketing can also contribute to the growth in terms of sales, in terms of losing the reputation. Especially that's very key. It cuts across all professions, whether it is medical, whether it is policy, whether it is. And it's the role of the marketeer, the PRO, to ensure that damage control is minimized. But they cannot do that without injecting new funds. So in my view, the marketers, you must come up with a matrix to say yes for this strategy, which are controlled and sustainable. They must be put into a certain plan. Now, if that is the case, how are you going to contribute to that growth in terms of sales? How are you going to contribute for that growth in terms of revenue? Which means that the expenses which you intend to incur must also show the direction of the revenue. It's very easy to come up with the matrix, with a proposal to say, now, in case we are going to come in as marketeers, we are going to spend this amount of money. Then we expect the impact in terms of growth, in terms of revenue, in terms of improving the reputation risk. There is no way in which the CFO will actually, or the CEO will not actually like that. Remember, whatever you do is going to be discussed at the government level. The government level are the ones who actually answer the plan. So you must have the figures and the ratio. Explain. Now, when you are saying we are going to let this profit, what's the distribution of money? Assuming for us that come in, we are computing this percentage. So, given what you incur must bring in more revenue, and you must also have both the figures and then the narration. In that way, there, just a highlight your budget will be approved, so you can go and definitely you be able to get the money, and definitely you will showcase because the results will come in, perform results. So, colleagues here, in my view, as per my experience as a CFO, from the organization, the issue is all about relation. You support what you are going to incur in terms of revenue in relation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My name is Larry, and my question, mine is really about the importance of listening to the consumer. Consumers can take a brand either way. It can involve a lot in the hands of the consumers, hands of the consumers. Despite the fact that that's who we do it for, there's also a need to understand where the brand is from, where the brand forms its identity, because that also will help in the future standing of that particular brand. Especially the impact it has on innovation. So based on that, what is your take on whether to revolutionize or to do a revolution or evolution in terms of meeting new customer segments? For example, the brands you talked about that have aged a lot and they need to appeal to younger consumers and something like that. How does that work for your experience?
Answer for you is it depends. It depends on your brand situation. That's why all the analytics has to uncover the unique situation that you face. So I don't want to give you a one-size-fits-all answer. I would rather you dig in and find out, does your brand need an evolution or a revolution? Not every brand needs either. McDonald's is barely changing. You guys should get McDonald's. McDonald's is barely changing. Their stock price is up 55% in the last 5 years. They're outpacing all of their competitors. They're beating Starbucks, Subway, Burger King, K.M.TV, and they're not changing at all. Coke is barely changing. We don't need a revolution to connect. We need to connect to grow. So if we think about it, what I'm trying to say here is the best brands know their consumer, know their brand, and connect those two together. That's where your answers are going to be found. So you've got to do the hard work. One thing that's frustrating, marketing looks too easy to the outsiders. They see an ad on TV, they don't know how hard it was to get there. It was great stuff. We have to do a lot of work with the consumer, a lot of work with our position. It only looks easy at the end. There's fights with our agency. Once we get an ad, we like with our agency. There's fights with our boss. You know, there's nothing really easy in this job. As I mentioned, all of the great work that I was part of was difficult. All of the crappy work was easy. I only found that out after my career was done. I wish I could have the lens of that during the job. But I only found that out when I reflected back on my career. And so we have to do the hard work to figure out the insights, the consumer, the target, the nuggets, the positioning, go through the process, work with an agency, come up with a brief, take a risk on the work that they do that's a challenge. Maybe if we're going to end it with this. Bill Burback, which is one of the most famous ad agency people, marketing can be distilled down to this very phrase. Find something interesting to say and say it in an interesting way. That's what we kind of do. We figure out what the consumer wants to hear, and we then say it in an interesting way. And that's what we have to do, is find that interesting thing to say it, and let the agency take you on the journey, finding that interesting way to say it. That's the smart and different right there.
Thank you, Robert. My name is Hilda. In markets where, first of all, the markets are global, but data is king. And in markets where data is limited, fragmented, and expensive, how can marketing teams create customer-led strategies that deliver impact? And also bear in mind, for instance, in a market like Uganda, where we have an explosion of SMEs, how would you advise them go about that?
Yeah, that's where I would say, so the question is, what do we do without data? And a lot of companies don't have as much data, especially if you're in if you're in a country where the brand is in 80 markets, but you don't have much specific data, or you're in a B2B market or some other kind of market, you don't have all the luxuries of the data. That's where I say you gotta use a shopkeeper's instinct. It's kind of thinking like you have the data. But as I mentioned, a shopkeeper's instinct is running that business based on the instinct of what do I, in the analytics space, when I do analytics training, I say, what do we know, which is the data, what do we think, and what do we assume? And if you don't have the data, only 10% of your stuff is going to be, what do I think? You've got to fill in the what do I think and what do I assume as covering the gap in that data. And that's where you got to use your instincts. So what do I think? Well, as I mentioned earlier, the shopkeeper's instinct, the World Cup is on this weekend. So I'm going to put the crisps and the Coke and all the snack food near the front of the store, because when they're buying whatever, they're coming in for milk, they'll also buy some crisps because the World Cup's on. If it's back to school, I'm going to put binders in the front, pencils at the cash register. That's the shopkeeper's instinct. And I don't need data to figure that out. I need instinct. And so fill in your gaps with I think this and I assume this. I assume people are going to buy more pens and paper at back to school time. I assume they're going to buy more crisps at World Cup time. And that's where we got to, sometimes when you get so much data, you actually lose out on your instincts, and I think you can get worse. I hope we get so wrapped up in too much data, we stop using our brain.
Amazing.
See, I'm proving that I can talk about marketing for 15 minutes.
A whole week. A round of applause for Grandma. how we call the marketing side, brand building, and how we can position our brands better. At this point, I would like us to bring this entire session to a close. A super round of applause for you guys. I think you have made this as interactive as possible. We have loved the discussions. Each of your questions was relevant for each other. So we are blunt. Yeah, it's not about answering some of your questions there. You just know what to say why. But yes, this has been an amazing time in front of you. We're going to have a few photos right after here. We shall have it as a group, and then your specific brand. You can then have a photo with brand as well. You can come together as a team to be good for you guys to have a photo as well, and just to ensure that you report back to what needed. Yeah, so yes, we also like to give a very, very special thank you to our sponsors. All this would not be possible without you. Each one of you, so yeah, for us to make this happen. You know, also your names are going to contribute a whole day. So yes, very, very proud in front of you. Also, thank you to the breakfast team as well as Africana for managing this amazing breakfast today, and especially the minds that have been working really extremely hard to make this entire day possible. The Datamine team, the Datamine committee that made all this possible. Really, a big thank you to all of you. So you're invited to the afternoon session if you can make it. It will also be amazing to have a discussion. It's a representation for that. Fair. But if you can't make it for the afternoon session and you guys work, we invite you for the cocktail. So we'll be working at the cocktail right after the afternoon session. So you're also invited for that. You're especially invited to join us. It's been great having the whole day, but I know anyone that will work. So we're exclusively invited for this specific morning session. And yes, that's the only events that we're going to have for the rest of the day. And yes, another special round of applause to each one of you, and I'll allow the camera team to guide us for where we shall be taking our photos. Yeah. Where would you prefer to sit down? Yeah, over there. Okay, so we shall move the seats so that we shall take our photos right there. Yeah, so thank you very much. I've been your host, Daniel today, and it's been a pleasure having this discussion.
There's two. There's elephant.